It is that time again. It is Observe This. Draven and I hanging out here on. I have one. I have one. I have one something that's hanging out and that's open that I'm hearing my own background on. Do you hear that?
That's weird.
Do you hear anything in my background?
No,
Okay, this is weird. Oh, I found it.
business as
Sorry.
usual over here.
Sorry. No, what sometimes what happens is I play the channel so that I can make sure that it's going, but then it is like 5 seconds behind us, so then I can hear my own voice like 5 seconds behind, and I just couldn't find which browser it was on. But I found it. Okay. So let me redo the intro. Observe This is back, and we waited specifically for WrestleMania to be over because I wanted to get Draven's thoughts on WrestleMania 41 as well. But we'll focus on the first part of this episode. We'll talk about a very fun issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter to read back because Dave writes that basically gives Vince McMahon advice on who to go after and how to raid all of these territories. It was wild. I was like, man, I wonder if these guys were like talking to each other in real time or something.
How are they're not? No, Dave. Vince is much older than Dave, right?
Vince is probably like 15 years or more older than Dave.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's okay. Yeah, because Dave wasn't his. Yeah, because it would have been interesting to see them get together and strategize the takeover here. But yeah, he was much older.
So I'm getting over a cold. I'm almost 100%. You just got a cold, so we're both kind of under the weather. So we're gonna tough this one out. But this may not be as long as some of the longer marathon like episodes that we've been doing. But I have to mention, because you're wearing your gear, I'm wearing my gear. Both teams are playing good baseball, but I think on the Dodgers side, you guys probably think you're underperforming. And on the Giants side, we probably think we're overperforming a little bit. And that has us both tied for first place, though Giants are losing, Dodgers are winning. So that may change by the time this is done recording.
Oh no! I've compared the records from last year. We're actually doing better than last year. So at this time, I'm not stressed. We're gonna take the division. We might even take the whole thing again. I mean, that I can't guarantee. That's more about who goes into the playoffs hot. But I'm pretty confident we're gonna take the division. You know, it's all peaks and valleys in baseball, man.
Blake Snell. I warned you about Blake Snell.
You did. You didn't warn me about Conforto though, but you definitely warned me about Snell.
Yeah, Conforto.
Yeah, I mean, and Glasnow's also out. So we got two of our orders are out. You know, I'm gonna circle this back to wrestling. Glasnow's such a worker. So the day he got hurt, he talks to the media, right? And the first thing he does is baby faces himself. You know, he's talking about he's like, I don't know what's going on. Nobody's more upset about this than me. You know, I'm just so frustrated right now. I'm so angry. So essentially, he's validating all of these fans that are ready to go after him because this guy could never finish a season since he was with the race. He can never. That's the one criticism they have of this guy. He never finishes a season, and so here it comes again. And I just, you know, as a wrestling fan, I like how what kind of a worker he was. That promo he cut. It was a babyface promo to turn them on his side. Very smart of him.
Hey, like you said, it's a long season. At some point, both Glasnow and Snell will win big games for you guys. And with as much talent you have, that's kind of just what you need. So you guys will be fine. All right. So why don't we talk about...
Robert is hoping that at some point... Is there a lag?
Oh, are you lagging a little bit? I don't know.
Is there a lag? No. I'm saying because, okay, let's go. Keep on going.
All right. If you do need to refresh your browser or something, that's totally fine. Okay. So let's talk about 1984. So where are we in 1984? This specific issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter in 1984. It is May, and Dave is still monthly at this point. There you go. That big giant book. You know, where does Dave get those photos, or the publisher? Where do they get those photos? Because it's not like those must be somehow in the commons, like how are they just available? I mean, I don't. Maybe they have some sort of license with. It's not with WWE because all those pictures are so old.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know where he gets them, but it's definitely a nice looking book. That's a fact.
Yeah, no, it is.
So it is thick.
All right, let's. So basically, what I was saying is he's still monthly, and basically what he's doing is he is in the process of moving back to California, and he thinks that if he can move back to California, I'm assuming he has to leave his job at the time at the newspaper. I don't know if he was thinking about working at a newspaper in the Bay Area where he lives, San Jose, but I think he believes that it's going to free him up to write more, and I think he's seeing that the business of his business, of the Wrestling Observer business, is just it's like it's there for him. It's like he sees opportunity. This business is changing. Vince McMahon is trying to make this business a little bit more national and worldwide, and thus maybe writing the Observer full time, or at least more than he's currently writing it, could be good for his personal career, which is kind of weird if you think about it. Because like, if you had a side hustle, and we all have side hustles, and this is one of our side hustles. Like, what would it take for you to go, you know what? I think I have to leave what I'm doing and just do my side hustle full time, because that's the decision that he was in the process of making.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody at one time or another is faced with that, right? Especially if you're passionate about that side hustle. But I mean, there's other variables that come into play. Obviously, at this time, Dave was a single guy. He had no kids. There's always a cost benefit to all these decisions, and these risks, right? Because it's always a risk. I think we're seeing it more and more during this era of like YouTube being a nice way of money.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about all the time how people quit their regular job to just focus full time on YouTube. So this is kind of like an earlier version of that, and they followed his passion, and it paid off for him. But I remember reading a lot of observers, even as late as like where he still, like, maybe he had some bad months, where he wasn't making his quota, and he was still second guessing a lot of this decision, because I don't know if you remember, he always have these observers where he gets all emotional and he starts thanking all the people that had his back, and all the writers. So, and that's like 91. So that's 6-7 years after 84. So yeah, he was very much second thoughts or stuff like that later on in his career. Not but even at this point, I think it's still a hobby though, right? In 84, it's still a hobby.
I think so. I'm kind of trying to figure out if he's what his new process is going to be like, just based off of what he's writing in this issue.
Yeah, and also they have tried to clown him on Twitter or X, because a lot of people try to tell him, if it wasn't for Vince, you're one of those guys, and he's like, you know what, I would have written. I would have written for a magazine, or he feels like he would have covered another sport, like his talent comes in being a reporter, but he would have had a good career just covering different sports. That's his comeback to that. When people are like, you're tied to Vince, and you owe Vince your career. That's what they tell him.
The idea, his career would have been pretty lucrative, in like the 90s and 2000s, because as a journalist, you could make money at that point, but then it falls off, and he would have had to reinvent himself, which is why I'm sure he's thankful for Brian Alvarez and Tony Leader for doing the whole podcast thing, because that kind of, you're doing what you're doing. And it's not like Dave would have just gone into podcasting because he didn't know that it was coming. It was someone had to tell him, "Hey, dude, this is coming." Iyada had to say, "Hey, dude, this is coming. Like, this is something you should look into." And so that just gave him another skill set that he would have never had, which is why, he always talks about this. Like, his career is kind of a bunch of flukes because of people who he's met and people who have thought that this would be good for him and that he would be good for them as well. It's not just people looking out for him. It's also they want to make money through him at the same time. So it's it's kind of, that's how networking works in general.
The thing to me that's always been interesting about Dave and the Observer and the way the wrestling coverage has kind of been throughout the last 40 years is that he has no equal. Like nobody ever came up, and it's there's benefits, but there's also like, you know, some negatives, because in other sports is these equals that presents these checks and balances for every reporter, right? And so it's there's less of a conflict of interest. Like even if you have like a beat writer for a particular team and they're starting to get way too involved with the team, there's always going to be like that, either the national media or the local media covering that team that's not like a beat writer that's going to call them out on it. I mean, I see that all the time. So there's these checks and balances that are in place for that. But in professional wrestling is different because there's only one Dave, and there's only one person that covers it like he does. You know, I know Wade tried for a while, but Wade, for whatever reason, never really caught on like Dave did. And there's others now, but these others are so much part of the new media that it's almost like they're trying to get them, you know. So it's different as well. So I think that's been one of my frustrations, because Dave is so influential, you know, with whether it's the 5-star match system, you know, whatever, and everybody in the business will know Sally, right? But yet everybody in the business really understands Dave's influence.
Yeah.
But he's also a human being who's gonna have some inherent biases like we all do, and
he's got his own
has
flaws.
Right. And so it makes it very frustrating, because it's like, where do you get where is the truth? You know, because we don't have other sources to kind of, or other media that covers wrestling like he does, to kind of like find the actual truth. And so that's a little frustrating. But as a custodian of history, I mean, I'm thankful for him, because the real story of professional wrestling is documented in books like The Observer, and, you know, just in what he talks about, you know?
So we're doing this. I had already mentioned this to you. We're doing this podcast called The Watch Back, and I am blatantly ripping off the rewatchables, which everybody blatantly rips off. But I have not seen it yet, really, in a wrestling landscape. So we're doing that, and I'm going back to like 2017, 2019. 2018, and I'm really just going back and making sure that I got my stuff. And I was thinking, like, if there, like you just said, there are multiple places that have documented movie history or television history or music history. Like, that thing has laid out so many voices, so many, and sometimes you're looking for different voices. You're like, oh, Roger Ebert said this in 1995. What were other critics saying? Because I don't just want to go with Raj. I want to hear what the other side was saying as well. You don't have that with wrestling. It's like, right, Dave has both the critique and the analysis, and he's got the journalism all in one thing. And look, I'm not saying that no one had an opinion. It's just they didn't publish it as much or as easily findable. You remember kind of when blogging started, you remember Kentucky Fried Wrestling, Scott Bowden, when he was writing about being a wrestler? So those were fantastic. And he would write, and I would look forward to every time he wrote, and then he got tired of it and just stopped doing it. Like, that is the other part of this, which is, for whatever reason, Dave doesn't get tired of it. He doesn't get tired of watching wrestling. And so I'm in this situation where I'm kind of in a post-WrestleMania malaise. Like, after WrestleMania was done, I wanted to watch Raw to kind of just make sure I saw what the new angles were. And then I watched Dynamite, because then I got to talk about it. And it got to SmackDown, and it got to Collision. And I was like, I don't want to watch any of this right now. I just want to relax. I want to enjoy my weekend. I'll listen to the recaps. I'll chat with people who did watch the shows, and I'll be done. And that was kind of like my freedom. And then now this week I can start all over again. Dave doesn't do that. He doesn't have a break. He just goes and goes and goes, which is kind of crazy, because I think I would get burnt out just on one single thing, which is why I like having a lot of different hobbies, is so you can kind of, you can feed yourself in different ways. But Dave's got like this one thing that he never gets sick of, and it's insane. It's really amazing.
Well, you could throw mixed martial arts in there. I don't think he's as dialed in as he's been in the past nowadays. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I remember Triple H did that video. I don't know if you saw it, because he's the same way as Dave, right? I mean, his season never ends either. So he is at WrestleMania where he's like, oh, that was a good show, guys, and then he's taking off his headphones from producing the show, and the Raw script at him, like, all right, he got like 5, and then it was.
Sorry, your thing was good. I think Draven is gonna probably try to restart his computer. So I'll kind of I'll set everybody up about what we're going to talk about. So there's two big things in this issue. One of them is Dave writes an essay on whether or not too much blood is in wrestling today. And it's so fascinating because if you think about some of the discussions that we're having today about AEW, which features a lot of blood and maybe too much blood, or WWE, which features very little blood, and the only time they do it is when they want to accentuate sort of like the violence aspect of wrestling. Like, okay, this is normal, and then this part is serious, so we'll add blood. Are you sure you're good, or do you want to restart your computer?
No, we're good. You tell me, we're good. You could hear me, right?
I see you're much better now, for sure.
Okay, let's go with it. If not, I'll restart. But
keep on going. So I was talking about the essay on blood in the issue, and it's what the same issue that we talk about today, with one company probably overdoing the blood and overdoing like the sicko kind of spots, and then WWE saves blood only to accentuate, like, yeah, this is something you should react a little bit more to. Either we're going to hurt somebody's neck or they're going to bleed, and that's what you react to. Everything else is sort of fun and games and not serious. Where do you land as your personal thoughts on blood? Like, are you someone who likes a lot of blood, or you only like it when it feels important, or where do you land on your personal preference for blood in professional wrestling?
To me, it's like, as long as it serves the story, bring it on. Even if it's in the third, fourth match, as long as it serves the story, then go ahead and use it. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's too much blood or there's no blood. It's a little awkward when, for example, when Sami Zayn wrestled Kevin Owens, right?
Yeah.
And there was like no blood there because they were saving it for Cody. Right. That bothers me. That bothers me right there. So I'm kind of like, I'm of the mindset, like, if don't chop the legs off of another story just to enhance your story and wait for the blood. Because in the real world, if this was the real, like, UFC doesn't say, oh, we're only gonna bleed in that first match, but in the main, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you just, if it warrants blood, use blood. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just don't use it as a gimmick. Like don't. Right. Like don't have somebody come with a run-in with a beer bottle and break it over somebody's head in a run-in, and then they're gonna gig. That's a gimmick. Use it when it's gonna help the intensity of the match or the angle. So to me, just to prove my point, at the Royal Rumble, I would have had both that match, the Kevin Owens match, and the main event. No, sorry, Elimination Chamber. I would have had that match, and then also the main event angle. Both have blood. So that's where I stand on it.
Now, where are you with someone like Bret Hart, who is clearly not supposed to use blood, but knows, because he's really smart and he understands where the fans are and knows, okay, I can kind of pretend that this happened hard way, but I'm actually going to gig here because it's going to make the match better and it's going to get me over more. And maybe sometimes it will get his opponent over less. Right. So it's a little bit selfish, but he also knows that it's going to make the match better and the moment better. And then he can pretend to Vince McMahon that, oh yeah, he punched me on accident. And that's where where do you land on that old school style?
That to me, it's more, forget Vince McMahon, because if you're going to do it, either he's going to believe you or not. You have to have the respect to talk to your opponent on that, because your opponent, especially if it's like an old school guy, like for example, Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8, right? That's a good example. Roddy Piper's gonna see through that shit. And Roddy's gonna be like, bro, you gigged and now I'm less over because you took the shine from me. So as long as Brett would talk it out with Roddy and Roddy's like, yeah, let's do it, whatever. So as long as he's okay with that, then go for it. When it comes to Vince, that whole story is weird to me because when it comes to Vince, I don't think it was so much that he didn't want Brett to gig. I just feel like he wanted to show Ric Flair that he had the bigger Johnson than he did in that whole story, right? Because he got mad at Rick, but he didn't get mad at Brett. And of course, Vince being the worker that he is, yeah, he let Brett think, you know what, you worked me. Brett's over here explaining how he carves with like an L shape so that he can. It's like, bro, Vince knew the truth. He knew you gigged, okay? He just wanted to keep Ric Flair in line. He knows you're one of his guys, so he wasn't gonna trip on you, So I think that's the story there. But no, I think it's important that if wrestlers are gonna do what Brett used to do, talk it over with your wrestling partner.
Remember, what was the story? Was it like Jericho and Batista where like Vince almost fired Batista for
No, he
getting
fined him
$100,000? Yeah, insane.
That's insane.
Why? I don't understand. Like,
because he gigged.
I mean, I know, but like, maybe it was just like I told him not to, and he did it. So
I think we have to take into account Vince's weird mood swings that he's had throughout the years. Yeah. And let's just say what it is. Mood instability is more like it. Fuck mood swings. And so he just caught him, and Batista just did it on the wrong day. But think about it, $100,000. Let's say Batista made $1 million that year, right? Yeah. That's 10% of his overall pay that he got fined for one little blade job. That's insane to me. But Batista did say that he was gonna quit. He was pissed. He wasn't playing it off. He was pissed. Like he was like, "What the like? That's insane."
All right. So the second big like analysis that Dave does in this issue is he looks at the current pro wrestling scene with Vince McMahon wanting to invade all these different territories, but he looks at them by territory and region, not even necessarily by company. He says, here's the area, and here's what everyone has in this area. So, of course, he starts in New York. WWF is tops in New York. And he says Crockett only has a Spanish language television channel because it is too expensive for Crockett to actually get television in New York.
That's insane. But then again, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York, so he had some penetration with some of the audience.
Sure. Yeah, sure. For sure. So St. Louis, Dave writes, WWF and the NWA run alternate weekends in the Kiel Auditorium. So the NWA, this part of the NWA, not Crockett as we know it. It is Vern Gagne and Bob Geigel. So they alternate weekends at the Kiel, and Dave writes that they are actually neck and neck when it comes to audience. Dave mentions that Vince wants the Von Erichs, and he wrote that Sam Muchnick wanted to return and possibly get full control of St. Louis, and that Larry Matisick is working for WWF doing PR. So it's almost like there's like the big bad Vince McMahon, and people are kind of hoping Sam Muchnick is going to come back and save the day a little bit.
Yeah, but I also think that there's a lot of wishful thinking there by Dave, because by this point, Sam is kind of done. He's like, he did what he had to do. I think Bob Geigel's running at this point, right?
Yeah.
And he was horrible because he would send in Kansas City tapes over to St. Louis, and Kansas City was one of the worst wrestling products you could have. There was no money invested in it. It was dark and dingy, and it didn't have the class that Wrestling at the Chase had. So I think if Sam did consider coming back, it was because he foresaw what Vince was going to turn the territory into, right? And he was like, I got to save it, because he worked so hard to bring in that territory up to like, it was so classy, and there was so much respect around the sport of professional wrestling, which wasn't the case nationwide.
Yeah.
So I think if he did consider, was for that reason. But at this point in the game, I feel like Bob Geigel more than Vince had done so much damage to that territory that it wasn't going to be salvageable.
It's like ripe for the picking, really.
Another interesting thing, really quick, is that when people think of the strategy that Vince, I love this era's Vince McMahon. There's so much to learn from him as far as being a strategist, a businessman. He's so young and he's so like full of ideas. People forget that a lot of the stuff that he created wasn't ever done before, ever. And then it makes you wonder, like, why not, right? Like something as simple as merchandise, right? With our 2025, we're like, why is this relatively new? Like or bleeding the fans for like those seats with the perks, like you get to walk down the aisle with Wade Barrett, and it's like, dude, imagine how much he could have gotten if he would, if like a fan back then. And I'm going against my instinct of calling them that other name from KLB, but I'm gonna do it.
Right.
So
starts with an M.
So some of the KLB fans are gonna be mad at me, but that's okay. So yeah, imagine if Hogan charged a fan $10,000 to carry the flag at WrestleMania 3, right? These are things that are common sense, and we're like, why didn't it take Vince McMahon to think about all this stuff? Although technically he didn't really think about it because he wasn't doing that. That was Paul Levesque's era. But yeah, so yeah, there's little gimmicks like that to make wrestling more special. But I was gonna say, my point was that he wasn't just thinking about talent, because I don't want people there to think, oh well, the promoters could have like paid so and so more. They could have paid JYD more to stay, Hacksaw Duggan to stay. But Vince was also strategic in the television network. That's really what he wanted. He wanted the times and the stations to start airing his professional wrestling. So depending how ingrained in the culture that particular promotion was, that battle was going to be harder, and some of them, like St. Louis, like San Francisco, they were right for the picking. They were dead. There was no culture there anymore. Some of them, like Memphis, were a little more difficult because they were so ingrained in the culture. And then Memphis was getting paid for television, which is one of the last that was doing. Same thing up there in Portland. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that Vince wasn't just looking at rating talent. He was looking more of the bigger picture of rating television stations and time. That's really what he wanted.
Yep. That was how he was going to market his shows, is just through television. Right. Okay, so you mentioned San Francisco Bay Area. So this is really an AWA versus WWF feud. AWA did get back on television last time we did this. We talked about how WWF scooped up their TV. And it's a different time slot, and it caused them to only draw 900 fans at their big show. And Vince had run San Francisco. He's also coming into Oakland in April. The interesting thing about this is initially what we saw was like WWF comes into these territories and there's like some intrigue. And then all of a sudden, if you're like if you're a fan of the other of your local, you almost kind of have to fight for them. You're like, oh, maybe I'll support this if it's cool, but we also have to support this. And so you kind of see the houses dip, but then they come back up because the promoters, they go, oh man, we have to start throwing our A+ stuff out there. And we can't be just, bringing in, our C games and draw the same. So it was sort of like, if you're a wrestling fan in these areas, you're getting to see WWF come in, and then your local is like, we got to load up on this stuff, so we're going to put all the best names. And so you're really seeing some crazy competition right now in these areas.
And what is that time? That competition is good, right? I mean, even with AEW and WWE, with the pay scale that we've been seeing, like it goes up and up and up. Competition is always good, no matter the brand, the sport. You want competition, or in any kind of business. Because I mean, the working man wants competition, not so much the owners,
not the owners.
And so because it makes everything go better, and the fans or the consumers, right? If it's not a sporting event, do you also want competition because you're gonna get the best deals, So yeah, this is probably a good time for like the hardcore fans, because they're getting 2 A shows a month. They're getting their local promotion with the A show, and their WWE is trying to bring an A show at this time. So very interesting.
All right, so now Carolinas. Dave doesn't write much about that because obviously
Because they
Crockett
have
is
Spanish, they only have a Spanish network.
The way that WWF is attacking Crockett is just trying to take their top talent. That's how he's attacking Crockett in the Carolinas. In Memphis, Dave does wonder if Vince could get Austin Idol or Jerry Lawler. He doesn't get either of them, and Jerry Lawler comes in 1993. But
Right.
Memphis is kind of one of those places where they're going to be able to fight because of the history and the culture and the prestige of wrestling in their area. And then in Dallas, Dave says Vince should not even bother unless he can steal the Von Erichs. It's literally his analysis of the Dallas territory.
And he was right. Yeah, he was right. I just saw Hollywood Demons last night. It was
I need to watch it still. I'm trying to watch
good
it.
Documentary. But no, Dave is right there. I mean, you couldn't mess with the Von Erichs during this time. They were red hot. They were family. So it's not like they were going to leave Fritz behind.
Right.
And Dallas struggled for Vince for a long time. The Dallas area was not a hotbed for the WWF. Maybe into the Austin era, really, when you think, because what happened is that when Vince tried to go into Dallas, obviously the Von Erichs blocked it, and that wasn't one of the hotbeds. Hogan wasn't as over as the Von Erichs, and then the Von Erichs killed the territory for everyone, including Vince. So after the Von Erich era was over, wrestling was kind of dead in Dallas in general. Even when WWF would come to the Reunion Arena, it wasn't to the Austin era where, it became huge again.
Yeah. So then we look at Minnesota, obviously AWA territory. Vince can't even get TV in Minnesota at this point. So, AWA is doing okay there, but it will come. In Toronto, it's Vince McMahon versus Jack on the Take Tunney before Jack Tunney becomes the WWF president. So Tunney's having to fight the Toronto battle with Vince.
Yeah, but he does the same thing with Jack that he did with Stu Hart. He promised them a piece of the pie. He promises them, a percentage of the house every time they come in. With Jack Tunney, he gave them that fake president role. So he worked them, right? He put him on TV. He's gonna think he's a star. So that's another old Carney trick. And so in the end, I mean, he ended up turning his back on Jack Tunney to the point where Jack Tunney passed away. No, but he didn't even get a graphic.
I know.
Interestingly enough, the Tunneys later on, they ended up going with Crockett. Because Vince wasn't really sending guys, because they had an agreement with Vince for a while, and they ended up going, and then Vince was not sending them the top guys, and so they ended up working with Crockett later on before they ended up going back to Vince, and then Vince took over the territory. So a lot of politics at play.
San Antonio is really Southwest Wrestling versus World Class. WWF is not really involved yet. Indianapolis, Dick the Bruiser is getting AWA's help to fight off the incoming WWF. And then in Ohio, Georgia is helping out and going head-to-head with Vince. And he expects Vince to win easily. And the reason is because of who is in charge of Georgia, who Dave does not like very much, and we'll get to that in the Comedy Dave segment, because it actually becomes Mean Dave. They
don't like each other. Let's get it right. It goes both ways. It's funny because Joe Blanchard from San Antonio, he inadvertently changed the face of the war, because going back to the gigging, he had a blood territory, and he had the original USA Network time.
Yes.
And he was told no blood on the station. Well, he didn't listen, and they booted him, and Vince jumped on it, and it changed history, because now Vince was on cable on the USA Network. So
yes.
a lot of people don't know that part of history, and there's more to it. I'm just simplifying it.
What? So it was it All American Wrestling from the get-go? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was All American Wrestling.
What was the first? I wonder what the first
with a young Bonnie Hammer.
Oh wow!
Pulling that name out of mothballs.
Yes. What do you remember the first date that they ran?
It would have been around late I want to say late '84. It was around.
Okay,
it's coming.
So
up.
it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah,
that'd be fun to watch back before we talk about that time frame. All right, so here's Dave's conclusion. The inevitable end is that in a few years, maybe even 2, possibly 5, there will be just a few promotions left. They will all run basically major cities. Eventually, small minor league groups will pop up from time to time. Some will make money in small wrestling-starved towns. Most won't. The question to be answered here is, where will wrestling's new blood come from? What do you think of Dave's analysis at this point?
He was a good what do you call him, prognosticator or whatever. He understood where this was going. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to deduce those things. I mean, it was common sense, but still, it's a scary time. You know, it's a scary time. It's kind of sad. It's kind of like what worries me about right now with Lucha. You know, where that's going.
This is exactly the next thing I wanted to ask you, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm very, very concerned because I know history. A lot of people are excited. I'm not, because I know exactly where this is going. And even like with boxing, you know, which is a topic not for this show, because I'm not a huge fan of boxing, but I understand the business. So
yeah,
that's another concern. And it would hurt me because I grew up with the culture of boxing, being a Latino in LA. So I don't want to, you know, that's kind of probably going to go to the wayside. But anyways, so Dave sees that, right? He sees the tea leaves. He knows where this is going. And interestingly enough, I mean, he wouldn't have to worry, or the business wouldn't have to really worry about new stars for the next 20 years at least, because WCW gave all those 40-year-olds a second life. You know?
Yeah, totally. They totally did.
Yeah, so 84 to 97, because I'm saying I picked 97 because that's when Vince started pushing the like Austin and Cactus Jack and those guys who were younger. So that would have been 13, 14 years before they had to worry about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but then it really bit them, I would say, in 2002, because at that point they only had Ohio Valley, and they struggled for a long time to make stars.
So you mentioned the AAA situation where WWE is buying AAA, and that is supposed to happen later this year. I'll tell you where I was when I saw this. So it was WrestleMania night 1. I was at a meet and greet for the Ringer, because I have friends who work for the Ringer, and I wanted to support their meet and greet with their fan base. It was really, really cool. There was probably like, I don't know, about 60 or 70 people there. So nice little get together. I got to see some friends, obviously my buddy Ben Cruz, David Shoemaker, the Masked Man from the Ringer. Who else was in there? Kaz, who used to write for WWE. He was there. Cal, Brian Waters, Cam Hawkins, a lot of folks who are affiliated with the Ringer who I think are really cool. So I'm watching the TV and I'm getting texts at the same time with people saying, what is this AAA thing? And so I'm watching the TV and I see, all of a sudden I see like it's like Stephanie Vaquer,
Dorian rolled on.
Yeah, the who's the young flyer for Vikingo? I see Vikingo, and I was like, "What, Vikingo?" So
look way smaller than I didn't think. That guy's tiny, man.
So I'm just watching this thing, and I'm like hitting Shoemaker. I'm elbowing him because he's the Ringer's main guy. I'm like, dude, check this out. And it's like, where did this come from? Now, Dave and I talked to Conan on the air. We did an interview with him. It's probably like 2 or 3 years ago now. And, it's the same old thing where Conan's like, oh, yeah, we're talking to U.S.-based companies. And, we're trying
That's
to bring
been going on for 20 years.
Forever, right? That's always the story. What Conan was telling us at that time was, so Netflix has this show called Drive to Survive, which really helped the popularity in the United States of F1. And he was like, yeah, we were talking to some of those guys because they were thinking about how do we enhance the popularity of Lucha Libre in the U.S. And obviously that's what Conan's been dying to do. So he was like, yeah, we're just talking to people and it's kind of interesting. And, Netflix is real. And obviously then Netflix brings WWE to do that stuff. Of course, they went after the big company. But now if AAA is under WWE's umbrella, theoretically they could do stuff on Netflix with Lucha Libre and AAA. But like you said, how does this always end? Which is the group that sells. Eventually, they're just all going to be gone. Like, I don't know what Conan's deal is. I don't know if Dorian is going to stick around. It's going to be all WWE guys running this stuff, which takes away the culture unless they keep some of the people who understand that, which I think they will have to, at least in the beginning, because they're kind of going into this blind. Like Triple H just talking publicly about this is clearly going into this stuff blind. He doesn't really know the difference between AAA and CMLL. Like I sort of felt like he thought maybe they were buying CMLL instead of AAA.
You know what? I got to give him credit though, because during that introduction, he tried his damnness to say Hijo del Vikingo. He tried, but his brain wouldn't give it to him. So he just called him Vikingo. Because he paused for, like, his brain is, but it's like that Vikingo. And it's like, okay, I'll give you credit. You at least tried because I saw you struggling. But no, inherently it cannot work, even if Paul wants it to work, because there is so many things that are going to come out of this as a consequence. For example, what if somebody's getting over in AAA? Like, what are you going to keep them in AAA, the lower brand? You're going to bring them up. So already inherently, it's going to be a feeder system. That much we could say, right? Just because of the way the business works, and it's like you know, as a Dodger fan, if somebody's tearing it up in AAA, you're going to bring them up. You're not going to leave them in AAA. Yeah. So the minor leagues are always going to be the minor leagues. They can't ever be more than the minor leagues by default, and that's what AAA is going to become. Now, they need to keep some people that understand the culture of lucha, because it's not like WWE. Only WWE is WWE. And if they start thinking they could do better, which was a Vince McMahon thing, then we're gonna have things like what happened with Super Astros in the late '90s.
Oh my gosh!
Or the AAA working agreement that they had in early '97. But
remember when Court Bauer talked Vince into bringing Super Porky and like the minis over, and like it was like sometime in the mid 2000s. Like
I remember that.
You saw these guys and they were just jokes. They were there for comedy. They weren't there to actually be wrestlers.
Because Vince McMahon grew up that these men need to be they're children, right? They have the mind of kids, and they're marketed towards children. Whereas the minis in Mexico are actual good workers. They're adult grown men who happen to be of miniature status, and so it's a different philosophy. But there's it got so much going against it, much, and I always tell people, what happened with ECW? Remember that ECW on Sci-Fi? That was going to be unauthentic. We had the zombie, it's like, what happened with the UWF when Crockett bought it? He squashed all the guys at that Starrcade. Yeah. I mean, it just happened. WCW, the greatest example of all time. And my concern is that the guy Philippe is working everyone. That's my biggest concern, because he looks like a carny, no matter, and I hope that Dorian or the Roldans, I feel like they're under the impression that WWE is going to invest money into it, but not necessarily take control of it. And that's very manipulative. And I could see this becoming a catastrophe for everyone involved, because I could see WWE thinking, "Oh, that's our company now," Yeah. So there's a lot of things, and also because this is going to take over, this is going to start in the third quarter of this year. I think they jumped the gun a little bit on this, a lot actually, in this announcement, because I don't know if it's personal stuff with AEW or all that, but I just feel like they spoke too soon, and before they really hashed out all the details, and it might come back to bite them.
I think they did it because they knew they were going to get the most coverage of the entire year during WrestleMania, because I did see it in what we would call the trades. People who don't have any idea what this is were writing it. So I think that's why they did it. You said something that made me think about what probably is like maybe the best possibility here, which is NXT Mexico with Rey Mysterio in the Shawn Michaels role.
Well, he definitely needs to retire, man, because that guy, you touch him now and he has an injury. So
I don't know if Rey wants to do that. I threw him out because he's Shawn Michaels like, in that he's been with this company for so long, if you want the cosign of somebody, Rey Mysterio's name has equity with Mexican fans. So if you go, no, look, Rey's it's you're in great hands with Rey, they will at least give it a chance with Rey because of what he means to Lucha Libre.
You know, one thing that Paul and Paul has gone on record, and I really like how for good and better or worse, because he showed how much of a little dick he had over WrestleMania week, all over his media calls, but he also showed a lot of like authentic like attitude towards the business that Vince didn't have. For example, he was very sincere as far as like he's gonna be different, he's gonna be more open to different styles. And you know, he said it with conviction. It wasn't like a company line, you know, because he would get frustrated, and he's frustrated at like he doesn't like the bishops of the world that go into this podcast and they have all the solutions to everybody's problems, but they don't look at themselves. I mean, he was cutting some crazy ass promos all weekend. And I think if he's really going to be open-minded, he needs to trust a lot of these legends that don't have the big international name, like a Negro Casas, you know, or even like a Land Lover who has a lot of equity in Mexico. Like these guys, if you bring them in and you give them a little bit of the reins, they'll help you make sense of all this. But I just feel like WWE is so much ingrained with that. If you don't do shit here, you've never done anything in the business. That these guys who really know the business in Mexico, they just won't get a chance. But if he's open-minded and he brings all these older guys, like they could really make it work, you know? So hopefully.
All right. Before we get to kind of where things are in this time frame, and then we'll get to our Comedy Dave segment, let's talk about the last question that Dave has. He basically says, can Titan Sports draw in opposition to a popular local promotion? Is Titan untouchable on its home turf, or can others make money in the large East Coast cities? Will Titan spread itself too thin? Will fans, now exposed to more wrestling on television than ever before, notice the difference in quality between promotions? Can Fritz von Erich use the popular world-class TV show as a springboard to going out on his own? Will another group like Mid-South or Mid-Atlantic attempt mass expansion? Will Sam Mushnick return, and can his back-to-the-basics approach overwhelm to choreographed electricity of a WWF show? And lastly, his last question is, will Ole Anderson ever run out of stupid moves? So you got to burn in on. No wonder Ole didn't like him. Like Dave is.
So Dave drew first blood. Then this is 84. Dave drew first blood on this one.
And you know that this question that Dave asks, he would actually answer for himself in 1992 when Cowboy Watts came to WCW, because he says, will Sam Mushnick return, and can his back to basics approach in the late 70s and the early 80s already going to be outdated? And Dave learns that lesson when Bill Watts tries to bring 1984 through 88 into 1992, and it absolutely doesn't work. So I just thought those were very, like, Dave is actually like, he's brainstorming in his own issue about, here are the questions that I feel like we're going to get answers to at some point, but we don't have answers to yet. So I thought that was pretty strong as well. All right, so WWF, who are they? Who's a newcomer? Cowboy Bob Orton, Akira Maeda, though not fully and not for very long, and Adonis and Murdoch also come through. And so Bob Backlund is back, and he's getting 50-50 cheers and boos. However, and this is a feather in Bob's
Dave hates Bob, as we know. So
a feather in Bob's cap is they sell out Madison Square Garden without Hogan, and will do so in the next consecutive month without Hogan. So I have no idea what Hogan was doing. Maybe he was in Japan at this point, but they actually sell out MSG. So this is, WWF is hot in New York.
But this is so Backlund's headlining the two sellouts, right?
He's at least headlining the first. I don't know about the second.
That's got to be a nostalgia run, though. It makes sense to me why they would sell it out. I mean, you know, because the guy has been gone at this point for about a year. So him coming back, and no, maybe a year, a little more than a year, because he left around February of '83. So yeah, so just him coming back is kind of a big deal.
So Ted DiBiase supposedly had been offered the Intercontinental title to come over, but
Man, that guy was offered every belt in the world, I think, man, at one point or another. Shit.
we wouldn't see him for 3 years though. He was like one of the holdouts for a little while. So the right around this time, right as Dave is going to print, the infamous Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka coconut over the head happens, and Dave has like we've already talked about this, but how he writes the issues, because he's on a typewriter and he's kind of writing in order of all the stuff that he has, and then right before he goes to print, he's obviously got some last minute news. So this section he calls Weekend Update, and I kind of wondered, did he steal that from Saturday Night Live? Like, what's going on here?
I hope so. I hope so. That would be something else.
This is an interesting one for you. So on February 12th, El Canek pins Andre the Giant.
Yeah, he body slams him. That's a famous picture. He's for the people that think that Hulk Hogan was the first. He was not the first. Canek body slammed him. Harley Race body slammed him, and I'm missing one more. But he got body slammed because that was a heat spot for the territories.
Yeah.
So you body slammed the big giant, and it's good. But I don't know if anybody body slammed Andre at his heaviest like Hogan did.
Yeah,
and that's a shoot. I'm not saying he was 700 pounds, but he was bigger than when El Canek or Harley body slammed him. And and then obviously when these guys body slammed him, he was working with them. He was more agile. He didn't have the back injury. Hogan had to work for that body slam.
Yeah. It was not the hip toss of Lex Luger and Yokozuna.
No.
Okay, so the Mid-South. I thought this was an interesting quote because he's talking about the Mid-South. And he says, the Memphis style wrestling through the Bill Dundee influence is taking holds and crowds have shot way up. What do you think about the Memphis style as far as
my favorite?
Is that so it's your favorite wrestling style? But
my favorite wrestling style, yes. To this day.
Can it work as well today?
Well, every time Jeff Jarrett wrestles, he brings it. He brings a version of it. For the people that don't know, the Memphis style is very cartoony. It's very absurd at times, but it's what I love, man. I remember Lance Storm. He once told a story. He was wrestling Well Done in one of the territories, and he had just come back from Japan. Where it's all bang, 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 very athletic, right? There's a lot of athleticism in Japan.
Yeah.
And then he has one of the guys from Well Done in a headlock, and he starts to feel something in his back. And it was Timothy Wow like doing the spider thing, trying to sneak in a hair pull. And he's like, why are you doing this? Because we're in Memphis. That's how we work here, so it's very cartoony. And so he did the spot where he's doing the spider thing on his back, and then he'll put the hand back when the referee kind of sees him, and then he'll try it again. And Lance is like, what am I doing here? Like, I just came back from Japan where everybody takes this serious, and this guy's doing a spider walk on my back right now, with his hand. So that I love that style, man. That's my chicken soup, I would say. Whenever I'm feeling down, I throw some Memphis, and I got a big old smile on my face. And Jerry Lawler was like the best for all that stuff.
And I guess my question is, in order for the Memphis style to work, the heel work has to be very, like, you have to fall for it. You kind of have to. That suspension of disbelief, it can't be too wacky.
You have to buy into it.
It has to be good because as a fan, you have to get sucked in. Wrestling fans probably believe they're too smart for that stuff. In some instances, I think we are, just because we've seen so much. Like, imagine if you've only watched a specific style of wrestling your whole life, like you will understand the patterns. But then if someone from a different wrestling locality watches it and they'll go, oh, wow, this is cool. Like, I've never seen this before. But now we have tapes of everything. So we've seen every style. We've seen every little trial and tribulation or trope. So you're not really surprised that much. And it's really the good stuff where you kind of get caught and you fall for it. But like, I feel like the heels aren't heelish enough today in today's wrestling to do it because
No,
everyone's so worried about having good matches, and B, the fans, like, it's almost like the fans, and this is me to a T. You're looking for the work constantly, and you're trying to see through it before it happens because that makes you feel good about your wrestling, your wrestling brain or whatever. So you don't even really allow yourself to sit in that moment.
I mean, but I think that's like a small part of the audience. That's people that are really like the Meltzer's audience. I would say it's like that. But if you go, I mean, WrestleMania 41, there was a lot of fans who they're still in it, man. They're still in that moment. They're still kayfabe is there, and because I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos of, because not that I care about YouTube videos of these fans and their experience. I just want to see it's like my own little survey, right? I want to see the satisfaction level, because I think this WrestleMania was horrible in a lot of different ways, not just the main event. Matter of fact, I think it's getting a pass just because of those 2 3-way matches. But this whole thing was just not good. So I'm seeing a lot of YouTube videos on reviews from like regular fans, man, and you'll be surprised, man. Some of these people, they're still in that fantasy and they loved every minute. And God bless them, right? Like, I wouldn't take that away from them.
Absolutely.
God bless them. But that's why, because my buddy Danny Geekdom 101, he was like, no, it's over for them. F this show, this or that. I go, no, you don't understand. They're still hot. Like, they're gonna ride this out for a while, because if you see some of those reviews, there's people defending the $5,000 package because they got to take a 2-3 second picture with John Cena. So there's still people that are deep in this, so for those people, the Memphis style would still work because they're just in it, But yeah, like, do you remember the SummerSlam 93 match with Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler? That's classic Memphis right there.
Yes.
Where Jerry Lawler comes out with that oversized ice pack on his knee, and he talks about how he can't wrestle because the Motor City doesn't know how to make cars, and he ran over a blue-haired lady, and then he had to go save her. Anyways, he brings Doink the Clown out to wrestle for him, but everybody remembers that, bro. Like, that's a great, But I don't know. I think it has its place, but nowadays it would be more difficult because we are in a very cynical world as well.
Yeah. All right. Where are we at? Okay, so Comedy Dave. Let's get to Comedy Dave, and then we can talk a little bit more about the current era, WrestleMania 41. I mean, I really enjoyed the AAA thing, like, because I haven't really talked to anybody but Dave about that, but I wanted to make sure I talked about that with you because I know that you would have a really good opinion on what that whole thing is all about.
One last thing before you get to Comedy Dave, going back to the AAA thing, there is a silver lining, I think, and this is my prediction. I'm gonna try to beat Dave before just predict some of these things. I do think that if the AAA thing goes south with, let's say, about a year and a half from now, it's really gonna help the indies here in the United States, because a lot of those luchadors are not gonna have jobs, because they're either gonna cut the roster because they're gonna cut the shows, or they're gonna send people from NXT to be luchadors, whatever the case may be. So we're gonna see a lot of good talent out there on the independent scene, and thus it's gonna really enhance the shows, right? And we need that because of the way the system is now with AEW and WWE. They snatch everybody that has potential. They'll snatch them up. So
WrestleMania weekend was not fantastic for that very reason. Like,
right,
there were those shoulder shows, but outside of maybe Zack Sabre Jr. and Michael Oku, like, the top guys are all in AEW or WWE.
Yeah, there's really no one. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who wanted to. I think I shared this on the show. Maybe I told you privately, but he wanted to buy the tape library from Super Dragon, right? From our buddy Danny from PWG, and I was like, but there's no business there anymore because PWG, in order for it to sustain itself, you need that A talent. You can't do a local talent fed with PWG. It won't work. And there's who's out there. Like, there's no one that could carry that. And that company is even in a bigger predicament because you need a full card of that. You can't just have the 2 main event guys be top guys. I mean, even somebody like a Jacob Fatu, he was kind of like the last one that was building a name out there. Even he's gone. Like, so all these guys, So going back to my original point, I feel like if Triple H doesn't work, it is going to leave us with a pool of talent that's going to be ready to work. And hopefully that'll lead into like another, not golden age of indie wrestling, but something more sustainable than what we have now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to Comedy Dave. Okay. Dave writes.
You need to find one with a more sustained laughter, though.
Well, I actually, the last UFC show that Paul and I did, he cackled like a hard cackle, and I meant to grab it, and then I forgot, and then if I didn't do the time cue, then I'm going to be spending 10 minutes trying to find it.
Take forever.
What I need to be in the right. Like if Dave laughs, then I got to immediately go, okay, here's the time cue so that I could redo that video and make that soundbite a little longer. Okay. On April 8th, the Oklahoma City card was headlined by a lights out match between Jimmy Garvin and Sunshine. To make things fair, Garvin would be blindfolded and have one hand tied behind his back. Although it did draw the largest crowd ever to witness pro wrestling in Oklahoma, it would have been better if the fans themselves had been blindfolded.
Jesus. Crazy Dave, man. Comedy Dave.
Comedy Dave.
Which sometimes spills over to Mean Dave. It just depends.
It's there. Mean Dave is coming. The last one is really Mean Dave. Okay, Bill Dundee was actually not supposed to be wrestling. This was in another time. I don't actually remember what he was talking about where I pulled this. He replaced the Dream Machine, who was Troy Graham, as the Bruise Brothers combination when Graham broke his foot, ankle, and leg in Nashville. Actually, he only broke one of the three, but all three have been used in the explanation to the fans. Perhaps the original broken ankle was just contagious and spread. Ronnie Garvin pinned Jake Roberts in 16 minutes to win the world TV title using a chair. And then in parentheses, he said, I always thought the TV title was only up for 10 minutes, but why complain? Because maybe this will end the feud. He's really down on this Ronnie Garvin and Jake Roberts stuff. Like I almost want to go like figure out what matches he was watching that made him so bothered by this.
I always feel like this is the vibe I get from when people ask him questions. Like Dave doesn't like to focus on the past. Like he doesn't like to answer these kind of questions. Maybe he doesn't remember, but like I always feel like when he does like a Q&A show or whatever, and they ask him these kind of questions, like he just goes through them fast and then moves on. Like he wants to talk about the current business or maybe the future a little bit, but he doesn't want to waste any time. Because I remember when Ed would have him on his show, and Ed just wants to talk about Texas, right? He wants to talk about WCCW, and they would have none of it. They was like, I mean, it was like they were pulling each other. It was like, but it was so awkward. But okay, he's not the only one.
My trick, though,
he just doesn't like to hang out in the past.
Okay, but my trick in doing that, and I would advise others if they really want him to, is you need to connect the past with the current business. If you don't do that, then to him, it's just like, oh yeah, it's like something that didn't work. And why do we even care about it now? Like lessons have been learned, but I can connect. So when we were talking about 89 and we're doing that show, obviously the direct correlation of 89 was AWA because they're going down in popularity, but the wrestling matches and things are going up and they're high. But why does that not correlate with popularity? So we did that. Now in 84 with the expansion and then with AAA, like there's a correlation there, right? So that my advice, if you have Dave Meltzer on your shows and you want to talk about history, correlate it to something that is currently in the business today, because then he can compare and then he really goes deep into his bag and it makes him think about stuff. So that's what I would say.
Another guy that always pops in when he gets shut down is Brian, because Brian was because he watches all these retro shows with Brian and Vinny, right? They review him or they review them. And then I guess once in a while he gets excited and he'll tell Dave on the air, oh, I watched this Nitro from 95. And Dave was like, and then Brian just moves on. Like, he's like, what? Because he never comments. He never like, he's like, okay. And then you got to move on. What is he going to do, Yes. But anyways, that's always, Dave don't hang around in the past, man. That you shouldn't, you got to move forward and, talk about. That's really what's important.
A lot of times, though, when he will say something from the past, it can sometimes get him in trouble, and so I think it's also a little bit of it's like a defense mechanism. It's like, oh, if I talk about this, then someone's gonna aggregate me, and then I'm gonna have people yelling at me on Twitter. Okay, last one. This one is not as this is about Oli, but it's not even it's not as bad as the first one. The first one I mentioned, that should have been more mean Dave than you know what? I don't even have this next one because I didn't even finish it. So that'll end Comedy Day. But I should have used the other mean one as will Ole Anderson ever run out of stupid moves? I should have added that to this section. Okay, so let's use these next 20 minutes or so, and let's talk about the current business because we were both really down on WrestleMania. You know, the thing that I don't like allowing my personal feeling about what the companies are doing reflect the actual product because they're not really connected. It's just, the politics, and WWE is like shoving the politics more in our face these days than they have in the past. And when they do that, when anybody does that, by the way, it kind of makes you go, I kind of want to see them fall on their face because they're really they're really feeling themselves right now. But at the same time, I pull back and I go, well, nothing is going to hurt their business unless Triple H just drops the ball time and time again. And he's not going to do that because there's too many good wrestlers. Even his worst storylines, he'll be able to see that they're not working and quickly move on. Like this Seth Rollins and Baby Steiner. Yeah, Baby Steiner thing. Like, I think it's an interesting pairing. I don't know if it's the right role for Braun Breaker. But I think in Triple H's mind is like, he is foreseeing Braun Breaker as the next guy, and Seth Rollins is going to be the guy to get him there, and it's going to take a year or whatever. I think that's how Triple H sees it. And when they eventually pull it off, I think it will be successful. Right now, the fans don't want to boo Braun Breaker at all, so that might force him to kind of move this along much more quickly than he wants. The other thing I was thinking about, CM Punk and Roman Reigns being two of your top stars and not really on TV week after week. I think that's okay when you're super hot. But if you ever do hit a lull, Roman Reigns' contract, you're like, brother, we could use you a little bit more. And he's going to be like, this is my deal, man. Like, here's when I'm available. So and it's like
he's already used that a couple times.
And so it's those kind of things where if you're looking for little small things that could turn into big things, those are the things that I see right now. But still, they have too much ammo and they have too much money behind them, and they have too many smart business minds. Not even talking about the wrestling stuff. Like Triple H is creative. It's kind of bleh to me, but it's bleh in a smart way because he's never going to do anything risky to turn the fans like entirely. Like he'll have his slow parts. I thought the build up to this WrestleMania really was one of those slow parts for him. So right. Ultimately, I think they're going to be fine. They're still drawing. Like we see the houses, they're packed. The ratings are strong. So if you're looking for like, there's something going to happen, they're on their down. I don't see it yet. Like, there's small things that you could look at creatively, but it's not going to happen. So I said all of that to say this, which is I was so turned off by WrestleMania weekend, and that probably caused a little bit of my malaise of like not really wanting to watch wrestling at all this past weekend. But when I talk to other people, they are just as fired up about the thing. And so I think like there's nothing that I can say about that. Like that is the proof of concept for them. Like they're just
and it's like I was talking about YouTube earlier, right? Like you still have these fans who like are so, but I will say this, there is still a lot of like negativity. Like even Ariel Helwani turned on them. Eric Bischoff turned on them. But I mean, is it really even turning on them or being honest? Because these people that are usually under their payroll or whatever you want to call it, they were just being honest. It was like the only one that was a tool, and he has to be, it was Pat McAfee. I mean, he's always going to be a tool because he has to be. He works for them, and he's talent. It would be nice if he didn't. That would, I would put whatever. And because I know I know he's a very smart guy, and he has opinions that he probably can't share. But all the other regulars, they were all on that. They were all down on that weekend, and I do believe. Yeah, you could say that Triple H has all the money in the world. He's got all the power, but I do believe that Triple H prides himself. I don't feel like Triple H is as blind as somebody like Tony Khan, for example, because I think Triple H really, really wants to be known as that guy that took the legacy from Vince. I mean, he was all over this weekend. He was all over the place. So I do feel that these little kind of criticisms, he does reflect on that, and I like that. I mean, and he'll make some adjustments along the way. I felt like he was way too overworked this weekend. I mean, he was doing so many things. I'm like, how is this guy getting to this place, to that place? I mean, he's going to bed at like 2 a.m. for his Hall of Fame speech, and he's like, and understand the production side of it like I do, is like, dude, this guy probably didn't sleep at all for those 4 or 5 days. He just didn't sleep at all. Like, it was so much stuff. And the reason I bring that up is because maybe he's got to scale it down a little bit. I would eliminate the Hall of Fame show. I think again, we're trying to make adjustments. That Hall of Fame show was like such a crutch for everyone, right? In a negative way. Like, it was like nobody wanted it. And so, because SmackDown is 3 hours, usually what they do is they merge both shows so that you get, it's like a nice little marketing thing. You get 2 shows for the price of one. They do a 2-hour SmackDown, 2-hour Hall of Fame. Everybody's already there. You're good. But this one was like a 3-hour SmackDown, then an hour break, and then actually it was a 2-hour break, and then another 3-hour Hall of. Oh God, it just so I couldn't get. I was falling asleep, and I was in my living room. I was like, I couldn't get through it.
You remember how Vince would run a big house show the night before a NWA pay-per-view or WCW pay-per-view, just to kind of make those fans super tired for the next. He does that with his. Now they're doing it with their own product, like
with their own product, man.
Like, we're gonna kill our own product because we have so much of it.
Yes, so I would say he needs to slow it down next year. Maybe eliminate the Hall of Fame. Maybe turn the Hall of Fame into like a SummerSlam thing, or maybe use it for another show that might need that pairing. But for WrestleMania, it's too much. But yeah, I just think he lost focus because he had so much. He was so overwhelmed with so much to do. And shit happened, I thought neither show was very good. Yeah, that 3-way with Roman and Seth and Punk gets a lot of love, but it's the same thing we've seen before. Is that whole All Japan, like, you kick out of my move, I kick out of your move. We've seen it before. That's been the main event for the last 10 years at least.
I did like the pacing though, because it is a completely different style from the type of matches that AEW is doing. Like, their idea of a big match is much different than WWE's idea of a big match. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. If you like AEW, you're going to think that one is better. If you like WWE, you're going to go, well, all these high spots don't mean anything. This is the real storytelling. And sometimes I watch the real storytelling and I go, are they telling the story for 5-year-olds? Because this thing is going slow. Like, we can all see this thing coming from a mile away, which is, I guess, is a good thing. But
yeah.
I did think that the pacing was good because the whole thing was about Paul Heyman, and he's great. But also the wrestlers have to be on the same page, and they have to understand. And this is in some cases where, when you have the egos of the previous business, somebody may have wanted to kind of screw with the way that thing happened, like, because Seth comes out with Paul Heyman at the end, which is the story. But if you're Roman and Punk in a previous decade, you may not trust the ending making you stay over. So you may have done something to make sure that you did. But today's, it seems like they trust the big picture and they get guaranteed money. So maybe they don't even care. But I thought, I was surprised. I was like, Punk usually doesn't look this not like bad, but he was
jobber. He looked like a jobber.
especially on Raw, right? Like he
Yes,
just got his
yes.
ass kicked on Raw the next
Yeah,
night.
there was nothing to
Hmm.
cut him off. He just got his ass whooped, like literally.
In his mom jeans too. Like I was like,
Yeah, and he had no
Willis
hype, he
was,
had no promo.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe
So
Triple H just hasn't forgotten. You never know.
maybe,
But no, I love the match. I really, really enjoyed the match. Great match. But when you're looking at the big picture after the entire event, I don't think that match is enough to save the
right?
weekend. Now, the women's three-way was amazing. That was in a
That's
whole
awesome.
different way. Just great performances all
That
around.
was more of the AEW style
Yeah,
high
yeah. Those
spot
women
match
were on
kind of
fire,
thing.
man, and they hit everything perfectly, and it was an awesome spectacle. But I had more concerns when we always talk about WWE in this way. Like the pacing of the show was weird. It's always weird because they want to show off all the celebrities, but also like I thought like Jacob Fatu and LA Knight could have used like another 4 minutes because that was a great match, and I knew those guys were gonna deliver because they did the whole like West Coast independence team. Both of those guys were on it for a while. They were in MLW together for a while, so they knew how to work. Each other, I should say. Obviously, like Ray Phoenix, like that match should have gotten way more time. I'm not really against the ending of that because you want to focus on the storyline. I just felt like it should have been a showcase for Ray Phoenix. Like just let him go all balls to the wall, and then he gets pinned, whatever. Because people are gonna remember the performance, not so much the pinfall. But it was a quick 8-minute match, and so I was very disappointed. I'm thankful I didn't go. And hopefully they learn. And I think because of the criticism, remember these people have been put on a pedestal for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
I think the especially after what Dwayne did the following day, what thing was on Monday or Tuesday, the whole Pat McAfee, where I think he was trying to do damage control, but he just made things worse. Because you come to find out that there's no planning for any of this. All this thing was on a whim, and he was just trying to figure shit out as he went along.
What do you think about my hypothesis, which I don't know if it'll ever be proven, but I was trying to tea leave what he was saying, and I thought basically the second that Cody told him he did not want to turn, that's when Dwayne was like, okay, I'm out because I don't want to be involved in the Cena thing because him turning is big enough. But this was my idea, and it would have shocked the wrestling world. And if we're not doing it, then I'm piecing out.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I could see Dwayne also just having a big ego and just having a hard time with criticism of his creativity. And we've seen those stories come out of Hollywood. Like he's already kind of tainted with that right now.
What do you think of Smashing Machine, the trailer?
I saw the trailer. It's okay. I mean, I still don't understand why that warrants a story. I had a couple of my buddies. They went to the test screenings. And
they did.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, what is it? I mean, and it's like just he goes to the Grand Prix and then that's it. And I'm like, that's okay. Like it has to be like a vanity project for Dwayne. Maybe he was a big fan of Mark Kerr. I don't know. But it's like there's no story there. I mean, I know he's gonna have the wacky girlfriend and everything that we saw in the documentary, but I don't know. There's no story there. It's like it reminds me of like when Tom Hanks did the Mr. Rogers movie, and I'm like, this guy was so nice, legit as a shoot. Like there was no story there. It was just Mr. And people try to. It's like no, don't work yourself. Like this movie was not good because there was never a story to be told about.
It was Rogers. Just about the portrayal. If he could make you believe that he was Mr. Rogers, like that's all that movie was.
And I think that's what people should focus on because I feel like the story is not going to be there. I mean, it's a Smashing Machine. It's pretty much going to be based on the documentary, but what we are going to see is like how The Rock kind of becomes Mark Kerr, So we'll see. I'm excited for it. I saw the trailer. But yeah, so I was very disappointed with WrestleMania weekend. I'm a little excited for Backlash because I think they're sprucing it up a little bit. There's some new matches. I'm not excited for
and some old matches, Cena and Orton.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna get me with the nostalgia. I'm gonna be honest with you. They're gonna get me with the nostalgia because it's already creeping in for me.
But you saw John Cena's performance at WrestleMania.
Yes,
is that all? Man. Is that all we're getting? Because if that's all we're getting, and these baby faces got to look like giant idiots to lose to this guy, that's not great. That's not great for the main event. That's for sure.
Did you ever see the Martin Scorsese's The Irishman?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so they did the thing with Bobby D where they did the de-aging gimmick, right?
They make him look younger.
So, but there's a scene where Bobby D's and his little gang are beating up somebody and they're kicking, right? So you see a young Bobby D, but it's still Robert De Niro at like 70 something,
Yeah.
and it's an old man with a young face kicking, and it looks very awkward.
No
That was John Cena.
athleticism in the kicks. Yeah.
Yeah, that was John Cena at WrestleMania. Those kicks, I was like, like this guy, he never even did that gimmick where they sent us a ring to his house. I think he wrestled for the first time since Elimination Chamber and didn't care. Like he was like, "Fuck it."
But didn't he look so much better in that Elimination Chamber and in the Royal Rumble? Like he looked fine in those matches.
What was last time?
Him looking disappointing at WrestleMania. I also thought they made, for the first time since Cody's been back, they made Cody look like a geek. I didn't like that.
Oh yeah. That to me that's the big question going forward into the summer. How do you rehab Cody? How do you? Because now he's painted with this brush of like failure and being a goofball. And by goofball I mean kind of being an idiot, right? That finish. So people are gonna see that, especially their fan base, and I'll see how they take it. You know, I mean, I'm interested in that. For all we know, Dwayne probably gets him to turn heel sooner than we think. I don't know.
Well,
maybe they could do a double turn at SummerSlam and have John Cena turn and Cody turn heel. John Cena turns babyface.
Okay. No one has said this. I don't really believe this, by the way. I'm just having fun with this story. What if Dwayne had the long vision? Like Dwayne's playing like Dwayne's doing like fight game stuff on Cody here. He's like, okay, I'm gonna go public and say that I wanted Cody to turn heel, but Cody didn't want to. He didn't actually say Cody didn't want to, but then I know that this current fan base is going to cheer John Cena because I saw the Elimination Chamber turn. So then Cody's going to get booed anyways. Cody's going to try and come back as a babyface. The crowd's going to turn him, or the crowd's going to boo him. And he's going to come back to me and say, okay, let's turn. Let's do the turn. Maybe that's the Rock's thinking right there. He knows the long view of what's going to happen.
That's very Vince McMahonish from '84 is what that is. That's very, very like looking through all kinds of trees and bushes and stuff.
Oh man,
yeah, no, I don't know, man. I just think Cody's in a bad spot right now. I'm glad that he's taking some time off. They have a picture of him in Universal Studios. I mean, that guy carried the company for a year, so he deserves it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to. I want to see him, and this is also part of Triple H running creative. Is I'm sure he sees it as a challenge, right? Okay, historically, there have been very few baby faces in recent memory, in last 20 years, who could kind of keep that momentum. Like even Steve Austin kind of felt the need to turn heel, which was a big mistake for him. He was feeling. What he was feeling was just that he was not as hot as he was when he was like the hottest guy in the business. He right. felt a little bit less than that, and just that means I have to turn, which was probably the wrong idea. Though, if he stayed healthy, maybe 2 years down the line that would have been the right move. Just wasn't the right move in 2001. But historically, and kind of how we see wrestling, like this has been WWE's main problem. Is that even their baby faces who they want to be their champions were getting booed. So how do you keep it's very hard for this WWE, recent crowd for them to keep a babyface hot. Now I'm thinking Triple H thinks, this is a challenge. Like, how do we do this creatively to make Cody still the lovable babyface that he was? And like you said, the guy who carried the company. So that, for my own sort of intrigue about wrestling history and business, I'm very much looking forward to see how they do that, because they may have to be a little bit more creative than they've been with what they've been doing of late. So
it's interesting because it's such a slippery slope, because if you bring attention to it, then the audience is gonna be like, now we take control of the show, right? Like they could always show a video of like Cody in his house in his bus with his dog or whatever, talking about how he felt the fans like booing him, how much it hurt him. In another era, that would have provided sympathy, do the Tyler Glasnow gimmick, turn yourself babyface before they come at you. But in this era, it'll be like, oh, now we control and then so it'll get worse. But then if you ignore it, then it becomes awkward because he's getting booed, and so I don't know, that's gonna be a very interesting thing. I know Danny has. I tell him not to put these titles because they're very pretentious, but he put one out today about how he says how to fix the Cody problem, and of course he has all the answers, right? Because he knows. But
he also knows that he knows the YouTube business well, and he knows that those kind of titles actually do get clicked on, even if they don't believe him.
I couldn't. Like, to me, it's more like, let's have a discussion about how I don't have the answers. Nobody does. Paul doesn't. Tony Khan, like, nobody does. These things are so unpredictable.
Yeah, totally. All right, you feeling okay? We got through it.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right, so we'll be back in a month-ish, maybe a little bit sooner than that.
Yeah, we'll come sooner for the next round.
And then this 85 book is coming out shortly, so I will send you a copy, and maybe if we keep doing this, we'll do 85. But it is my thank you for you continuing to do this show with me.
I love it, man. It's just having me on here. It's always great to talk wrestling, and it's I love it, man. Even when it's kind of a letdown, I still love wrestling. So
yeah, that is one thing.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that is the one thing that, because I sometimes I think I'm like, man, I have so many of these different interests. What is the thing that keeps me so connected to wrestling? And I think one of them, it's the community. I really enjoy the community that we've created in the Fight Game Media Discord. And obviously talking to people who've been following it as long as I have, like you and John LaRocca, because you gain a lot of insight by what your fandom was like when you were a kid, and not ever really disassociating from the product. Like, there were times in my fandom where I was like, this is so stupid. Like 95 WWF. I stopped watching 95 WWF. If I was watching anything, it was going to be WCW. But still, I was still connected, and the way that I stayed connected as an adult was because I was so interested in the business stuff, and so through the Observer, even in a lot of the bad times. So yeah, it's just fun when you have a connection. So if my fandom starts in 85-ish to now, like, that's a long time, man. So that's like, I'd be giving up 40 years of something that I've really followed as a fan and as a historian, or as someone who pays attention to the business. So yeah, there is something, and there's value in us being longtime fans for sure.
Yeah, and there's wiring that's in our brains that it would be difficult to one day just say, I'm never going to watch this again. I'll give you an example. I mean, over the last month, I've gone to quite a few wrestling shows. I was at TNA on Sunday, which was amazing, by the way. I had a great time. I was at MLW about a month ago. I don't know if I'm gonna go to New Japan. I think it's tomorrow or the day after, because the card is not very intriguing to me right now. And it is a ways out, so maybe I will go, maybe I won't go. But is
that in Long Beach? Where is that?
No, that's in Ontario, which is about 40 minutes away from me.
Okay.
But with traffic, and I think it's a weekday, so with traffic, we're looking at an hour and a half for me. So I might not have to do it. Yeah, it's a lot. So but that's like an average Giants game for you, though. So it's like, the Dodger Stadium is like 10 minutes away from me, and I love it.
Yeah.
But those prices are still keeping me out, though, so it doesn't matter. but no, yeah, but I mean, one thing that, like, just going into a live wrestling show, like, you know how you go through the little curtains, the little walkway, like, I still get that adrenaline, like, shit. I mean, you see the ring, and it's an amazing time, like. So that's something that I don't think I'm ever gonna outgrow. It's just, I love going to these shows and talking about them. So yeah, we'll be back next month.
All right, man. Thank you to all the folks who were in the chat, hanging out with us. Stephen Vargas, someone even asking us to get Denny Luis and Danny in a.
That's not gonna happen ever, I don't think.
Fernando, Peter. Of course, Maria Graciela, as always, hanging out with us. Appreciate y'all And next month sometime, Draven and I will be back. So for Draven, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.